Welcome back to The Explainer. So you might notice things look a little different today. We're intentionally framing everything in that classic 16:9 aspect ratio, pushing a rich cinematic teal and orange color grade and dropping in those deep movie blacks. Why? Because Christopher Nolan's latest masterpiece absolutely demands that theatrical mindset right from the jump, and we want to immerse you in it immediately.
It really brings up a fascinating question. Why can't we ever get the exact same movie twice from Christopher Nolan? I mean, audiences usually just want a director to play their greatest hits, right? Give us that exact same thrill ride. But true auteurs, true visionaries, they're in a constant state of evolution. They literally can't just copy-paste their past work because they're always chasing the next impossible challenge. And today, we're going to see exactly how that relentless drive led Nolan to his most daunting, expectation-shattering project yet.
Here's the game plan for today's Explainer. We'll be breaking down this massive departure in 4 distinct acts: defying the Nolan expectation, rewriting pure cinema technology, grounding the ancient myth, and finally, the ultimate big screen mandate. Let's get into it.
Act 1. Defying the Nolan expectation and how he's completely breaking the mold.
Let's be real, we all have massive expectations when we walk into a Nolan film. We know him for those mind-bending scripts and crazy practical effects. Think about Inception, Interstellar, and Oppenheimer. They're all heavy explorations of abstract concepts, right? Time, the crushing weight of gravity, dense modern history. But his 2026 film, The Odyssey, is a total pivot. It's his very first true dive into ancient fantasy and mythology, leaving the modern world completely in the rearview mirror.
The contrast here is just brilliant. If you look at past Nolan creations, they relied so heavily on strict sci-fi rules, high-tech weapons, physical realism, and let's face it, usually a pretty cold, psychologically isolated male protagonist. But with The Odyssey, he's adapting Homer's ancient Greek epic head-on. He's trading in the high-tech realism for brutal sword and sandal combat, literal mythical monsters, and swapping out those isolated characters for incredibly intimate, emotional, family-driven dynamics.
It is just a completely different landscape. Right now, Tom Holland's Spider-Man Brand New Day is dominating the pop culture conversation. And fun fact, its preview is actually trailing right in front of Nolan's film in theaters. But you've got to understand the distinction here. The Odyssey is an entirely different cinematic beast. It's not trying to be a fast-paced superhero romp. It is going for profound ancient weight.
Moving on to Act 2, rewriting pure cinema technology and pushing the absolute limits.
This massive creative evolution didn't just change the script. It literally forced Nolan to rewrite the rules of filmmaking tech. Usually, directors, even Nolan himself, only break out the IMAX cameras for massive sweeping action sequences, right? Because historically, they've been way too clunky for heavy dialogue. But Nolan being Nolan, that wasn't good enough. He made the absolutely historic decision to shoot every single frame of this ancient myth on IMAX. That makes The Odyssey the very first narrative feature shot 100% on IMAX cameras.
Just to put the sheer unbelievable scale of this undertaking into perspective for you, 2 million. That is 2 million feet of physical film used to capture pure IMAX 70mm resolution. Dealing with that much massive, heavy film stock created a literal logistical nightmare on set. But if you know Nolan, capturing the highest possible visual fidelity is just non-negotiable.
Remember how I said those cameras were clunky? Well, that brings up a massive technical hurdle. Mechanically operating IMAX cameras are loud, like extremely loud. They sound almost like giant sewing machines on set. So to capture usable audio, they have to use these giant noise-canceling covers called blimps. The problem is, these blimps make an already huge camera incredibly wide, way too wide to physically fit closely between actors when you're trying to film a tight, intimate, emotional scene.
So how do you solve a physical impossibility like that? Well, you invent a workaround. Knowing the blimps were too huge for intimate close-ups, Nolan actually engineered a custom, highly complex mirror system. Actors literally looked at precise reflections of each other to maintain perfect eye lines and intense performance timing, all while this giant blimp-covered camera was secretly rolling right between them. Absolutely wild, right? It captured the performance without blocking their view of each other.
And the payoff for this crazy technological workaround is just staggering. When you look at the final image, you're seeing massive, raw, non-digital textures. You experience everything from the colossal, terrifying scale of the Cyclops cave, all the way down to the actual physical sweat and tears on the actors' faces. And the best part? It fills the entire massive vertical screen completely free of any distracting CGI smoothing. It is just incredibly raw.
Which brings us to Act 3, grounding the ancient myth and how he brings Homer to life.
The Odyssey, as you probably know, originates from Homer's 8th century BCE epic poem about King Odysseus's brutal 10-year journey back to Ithaca after the Trojan War. But what's really fascinating is how Nolan tackles this ancient source material. He takes this sprawling myth and turns it into a masterclass in intimate character building. He completely strips away those distant, godlike tropes we're so used to seeing in old Hollywood epics and drops in modern dialogue dripping with deep psychological stakes. We get a deeply vulnerable, haunted warrior in Odysseus, played masterfully by Matt Damon, who is simply fighting to get back to his family. And at the same time, Anne Hathaway's Penelope is revolutionary. She isn't just passively waiting around as a victim, she has incredible independent agency and complex tactical layers, constantly outmaneuvering everyone trying to steal her throne.
And that perfectly sets up Act 4, the ultimate big screen mandate, and exactly why you must go see this.
This explainer really matters right now, because the reception to this creative pivot has been nothing short of astounding. The film is currently being hailed as a true historic milestone for modern cinema, locking in a massive, near-perfect 9.5 out of 10 rating. Critics and audiences are universally recognizing that Nolan has pulled off something that feels distinctly ancient, yet entirely groundbreaking.
Nolan engineered this movie from the ground up to be, quote, a sacred tribute to the big screen experience. Every single choice, from those 2 million feet of film to the custom mirror rigs, was done specifically for the theater. Waiting to stream this on your television or, God forbid, a laptop at home is simply not going to do this artwork justice.
Honestly, when you combine the monumental practical locations physically shot all across the globe with the booming, literal seat-shaking sound design by Ludwig Göransson, the recommendation becomes a total rule. True IMAX theater viewing is absolutely mandatory for this one. You really must secure a ticket at your closest proper IMAX theater to witness history in the making, exactly the way the director intended.
The Odyssey is the ultimate testament to why we can't ever get the exact same thing twice from Christopher Nolan. He simply refuses to let the cinematic medium stagnate, pushing it further into uncharted territory with every single frame. Which leaves us with one final provocative question for you to ponder. In an era entirely defined by the convenience of streaming at home, will you answer the call to step out, sit in the dark, and witness cinematic history on the biggest screen possible? The choice is yours, but I know exactly where I'll be. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you at the movies.